Hello, I'm Rachel Clarke. I'm going to talk to you about Big Cat Read On books and why I think they are just fantastic for teaching reading comprehension. You can see in the room, I've got so many of them here with me, and I'm holding onto one tightly, which I'm going to refer to during this video. I think the first thing to do is just say, it's this one, When the War Comes In. It's the first one that I read and I absolutely adore it. You may be familiar with the author, Chris Callahan. He wrote the Shinoi and the Chaos Crew books for Big Cat. And he's also very popular with children for some of the other books that he's written outside of the Big Cat programme. So this book is set during World War II. It's set in Tyneside, and you can probably guess by looking at the cover here that it is set near a shipyard. It's a fantastic book that manages to weave things that really happened during the war with fiction. It's such an engaging read. I absolutely adored it, and I think your children will too. So just focusing on this book particularly, then I'll keep it in my hands and talk about how I went around planning the ideas that are inside the teacher's notes for this book, and then how those ideas sort of expanded out and were used in all of these other books that you can see here in my office. So it's about the war. And most of us would expect children at the top end of Key Stage 2 to have some prior knowledge of World War II. It's a theme that comes up through history. And actually there are quite a lot of books that they will have read where World War II features. But there are things in here that they may not know. And that when writing the teacher's notes, I was really aware that if they're going to build that mental model that we really want them to have in their mind, you know, that visual image of what it is they're reading, then I needed to set some foundations with the children so that they stood a chance of really engaging deeply with this text. And that's something that then found its way into the plans, the teacher's notes, the ideas that we wrote for you to go with all of these other books. So we've got this first little stage before you get into reading where it's all about setting the foundations. And there are a couple of ways that I did that when I was writing the notes to go with this book. And the first one was I was thinking about Tyneside because the action takes place in Tyneside. I've been to Tyneside myself. I'm not from the area, but thinking about children I know where I'm based, what would they know about Tyneside? Were they able to find it on a map? Can they put their finger on it on a map? And what do they know about that area of the country, whether they are in England, Scotland, Ireland, or, you know, they're overseas? So what could we give them to help them to understand something about the place where this story takes place? And so one of the first things that are in the menu of ideas for you is to just tap into that. You know, where is Tyneside? Can you find Tyneside on a map? And what do you know about the area? Now, it just so happens that within this book there is a football match. Football is quite important. It's a really great sequence in this book as well. There's loads of action. It's really, really fun. What do the children know about football on Tyneside? Have they heard of Newcastle United? Do they know their nickname, the tune? And that weaves its way into the book. So there will be children for whom that's background knowledge, particularly those children that enjoy football. But for those children that's not part of their background knowledge, and so it's not something that we're trying to sort of pull out of their memories for them, we're giving them an insight and we are feeding them some new knowledge to help them engage with the text. So that's one of the first things that you encounter in the teacher's notes when you're working with this particular book. The other thing that when I was writing the notes became really, really apparent to me was the language that's associated, the vocabulary with shipbuilding and ships, and in particular warships. And there's actually a fair amount of vocabulary that is very, very specific just to this domain. just to this area of shipbuilding. And so again, in that introduction, in that laying the foundations part of the teaching notes, there is the option to look at that really high order, very subject specific vocabulary around shipbuilding and the parts of a warship, so that when children encounter that vocabulary, they've got some understanding already. So those are the first sort of ideas that I had, just for making sure that children could access this text and they could make the most of it, and they could start to build those images in their minds that are just so important to get as much as possible out of a text. You may have noticed already that I've talked fairly often about a menu. When I was reading these books and thinking about ideas that we could have for us as teachers and the children with the books, what really struck me was that every class is different. Every group within your class is different. Every time you pick up this book, whether it be in one academic year or over a series of academic years, and you're using it with children, they're all different. And you are likely to want to do different things with it. And I think that keeps things fresh, actually, doing different things. You know, it can get a little bit boring as a teacher if you are always doing the same activity with a particular book. Whereas if you've got a menu of choices, you can dip in and you can dip out, and you can change what you do with a book depending upon the children that you've got with you. And so the teacher's notes for the read-on stories are different to usual reading notes that we would write for you for any other Big Cat book, because you can dip in, you can dip out, you can just tease out what you want to use that's going to work with your children and the time you've got available. It's a menu, which I think is quite empowering for you. You get to shape the curriculum you want with a particular book. So the menu is about choice, it's about flexibility, it's about adapting to meet the needs of all the different children that you've got in your class at one time. And I think it makes for quite a fun and interesting dynamic when working with a book, that you've got all that choice in front of you. Oracy is so important, isn't it? We know that children understand more when they have the opportunity to talk about their understanding, to talk with each other. It's so often the case, isn't it, that whether it be us or whether it be the children, you think one thing about a book, and then when you have a conversation with somebody else, your thoughts evolve. Sometimes they're richer, they're deeper, they're more complex as a consequence of those conversations. Sometimes you change your mind. You listen to other people and you think, I think they've got something valid to say there, and I'm going to change my thinking about that book. And so oracy is really important in the plans in the read-on books. So there's loads of opportunities for discussion there. Okay, so in the menu, I have designed, and the other authors have written for, oracy activities. We've used the title Book Talk because it's something we use at school quite a lot now, isn't it? That idea of book talk and designing opportunities for children to talk about the books that they're reading. And under that banner, there are lots of things that we have done. So we've made sure that in Book Talk, children get the opportunity to talk about their predictions. So they get that opportunity to think about what comes on the next page turn or what might happen later in the book. So there are those opportunities there. There's always the opportunity for retrieval. It's one of my things that I'm quite keen on, actually, is that we don't forget about the importance of retrieval. Sometimes when we're thinking about difficult inferences or getting children to make some quite complex and deep meaning and connections in a text, sometimes we forget about how important it is to actually be able to say, I know where that information is in the book, I can find it, I can put my finger on it, I can show it to you. And because I can do that, I can use that information to answer your questions and to talk about inferences and predictions and the effectiveness of the language that the author has used. So retrieval is planned for within the menu quite often. Inferencing, I've just talked about. There's plenty of opportunities for children to get involved in conversation about inference and to be making their own individual inferences as well. But this is oracy. This is book talk and oracy. And so we have made sure that there are drama activities such as Conscience Alley, such as hot seating. There are moments where you can freeze frame, where you can really get inside a character in order to be able to infer their feelings, to empathise with them, to talk about the text. Empathy then. I've just mentioned empathy. Connecting with characters is really important. Our characters in these books that are around me are all facing challenges. Some of those are quite big challenges that involve quite a lot of upset for some of our characters. Some of them are smaller challenges that they've got to face in order to, get a resolution to their particular story. And so being able to empathise them is very, very important. And we're encouraging the children to do that through the menu that we've got for you. And some of the ways that we get them to do that is talking, how do I feel? Have I ever felt like that? I remember a situation when I was facing that problem. Or it might be through things like letters and diaries, having that opportunity to do some short writing to show how they empathise. That brings me on to writing. There is writing in every single one of these texts, not lots of writing. It's generally quite short. And we have got things like diaries, we've got letters, short instructions, we have got a wanted poster for our Wild West story. So none of it is really long writing. None of it is the type of writing that you'd have at the end of your writing teaching sequence. They're short opportunities for children to practice their writing, and actually, because it's independent writing, it may give you some really useful evidence, for how well they can write outside of those writing lessons. That's not the aim, but it's there. It might help you out. And then just beyond the text, each of these books just makes connections to the world around us that is interesting. It might build on children's broader general knowledge, and in many cases it actually links to the national curriculum as well. So in the case of this book, which I keep lovingly holding, there are clear links to World War II. One of the activities I wrote and put into the menu for this book involves finding out about the games and pastimes of children during World War II, because we get a little window in this book into games and pastimes. So it seems like a nice thing for children to do. That, I think, probably sums up for now what I think about read-on books, how we can use them for reading comprehension, how fabulous I think they are, and hopefully we might get some more so that we can expand this wonderful set of resources for using for reading comprehension. Thank you.